Vorlek's third tongue coiled lazily around his lower mandible as he drained the last of his marrow ale, the acidic liquid steaming against the bio-reinforced glass. The chamber stank of ozone, dried blood, and scorched hide and aroma the Deathworld. Conquerors considered nostalgic. They lounged around the obsidian table like bored apex predators reminiscing about ancient kills. No greetings. No formality. Here, strength was the only etiquette that mattered. Takalar of the Thorns clicked his claw against his exoskeletal jaw, eyes glinting with violet heat. My spawning pit devoured 97 of us before I saw my second molt. I was the only one to kill the matron, took her eye as a trophy. He slammed the eyeball onto the table still preserved in a crystallized stasis orb. The others grunted, unimpressed. Cute, rumbled Zakmal, a portion of its fungal mass oozing through its containment harness. My spores once rebelled mid-evolution. I spent 4 years at war with myself, literally, killed 3/4 of my own biomass to prevent civil collapse. Elaruan the Mind Skinner hovered silently above the floor, tendrils trailing behind its translucent form. A soft psychic pulse rippled through the air like an itch in the brain. I was born during a thought storm. My cradle siblings tore each other apart under psychic overload. I only survived because I couldn't scream. They all paused, basking in the grotesque glory of their shared legacy beings shaped by planets designed to annihilate life. Planets of lava tides, poison clouds, gravitational whiplash, and sentient weather. Each of them had faced extinction, not just from their worlds, but from their own evolutionary lineage. And they'd won. That's what made the Deathworld conquerors. Clubs sacred, you didn't apply. You didn't get invited. You simply were, if you had the scars to prove it. The table turned to silence as a synthetic voice crackled through the chamber. Galactic Observation Council proxy in attendance. Announced the AI drone entering through a pressurized vacuum door. Its casing bore diplomatic markings, and its frame floated rather than walk deliberate design to appear unthreatening. I bear statistical records for ecological threat reevaluation, the AI said. Several planetary reclassifications are under review, Takalar snorted. And why should we care for numbers? Because one of those numbers is Earth, the AI replied. The name hung for a beat, then set off a chain of scoffs and derision. Humans? Vorlek barked, acidic, saliva hissing as it struck the table. The monkey things who poison themselves recreationally? Elaruan's psychic form shimmered uneasily. They are statistically improbable. They eat things that try to kill them, Zakmal said, one spore eye pulsing. I observed one willingly ingest a venom sac beast raw on a dare. It should have melted his insides. He merely belched and filmed it, Takalar sneered. I saw one surf a lava flow with a metal board. For entertainment. They upload such acts to a global network called the Net, the AI continued. It has created a cultural phenomenon where risk is not only accepted, but celebrated. They think pain is fun? Vorlek demanded, disbelieving. Zakmal shifted uneasily. I attempted to infiltrate one of their data cores. Within 20 minutes, half my hive's cognitive loop destabilized from exposure to their memes. What species creates entire libraries of failure for laughter? They sent a diplomatic delegation to Graxel Prime wearing inflatable costumes, the AI did. The Planetary Council thought it was a pre-invasion psychological weapon. Elaruan's voice turned colder. It is a psychological weapon. We tried sending mind-seers near one of their military operations. None could sustain coherent links. Their emotions are too erratic. Elation during conflict, nostalgia in violence. Humor while bleeding. The IS tone remained neutral. Reports confirm human colonists have begun voluntarily exploring Class 13. Deathworlds, for recreation. That silenced the room. Not because they doubted it, but because they realized what it meant. Class-13 planets weren't just deadly. They were wrong. They defied survival logic. No single life form should outlast them, yet humans were not only entering them. They were coming back with stories, photos, jokes. "I saw footage," Elaruan said. "One of them built a barbecue during an acid rainstorm." "They're not just surviving," muttered Zakmal. "They're mocking the concept of danger." The AI floated back toward the door. "Earth has petitioned for reassessment. Not to be reclassified downwards, but upwards. They believe their planet has been underestimated." "What kind of species brags about that?" Takalar hissed. The AI turned back briefly. "The kind that thrives on adversity. The kind that doesn't run from pain, but makes it a ritual. A competition, a source of bonding," Vorlek snarled. "We evolved through extinction. War, fire, blood. What are humans if not cosmic jokes with misplaced confidence?" Elaruan's tendrils writhed. "They are a species that treats fear as a toy. That's not confidence. That's pathology. And pathology spreads," Zakmal said quietly. "Already, other species mimic them. Laugh like them. Fight like them. They're not the apex because they're the strongest. They're the apex because they're contagious." The eye left in silence. No one moved for a long while. Vorlek finally reached across the table and refilled his glass with a shaky claw. "So," he growled, "what happens when the galaxy catches the disease?" No one answered. The table of apex monsters creatures, born in agony and violence, felt the cold realization begin to creep in. They had survived Deathworlds, but they had never survived humans. It started with a flame war in a Terran chat forum about who could survive the longest on Morath. The planet had no native name. No one had ever lasted long enough to ask. Class 13, uninhabitable by all known metrics. Air laced with neurotoxic spores. Apex predators that projected fear like a biological Wi-Fi signal. Shifting terrain. Nightmares made of light and teeth. The perfect place for humanity to prove a point no one had asked for. Lucille. Lucy Chains Alvarez stepped off the drop pod ramp with a toothpick in her mouth and a flamethrower slung casually over one shoulder. "Smells like a biker bar had a baby with a landfill," she muttered behind her. Corporal Denny dropped to one knee, strummed a ukulele, and sang a line from an old pre-Unity song. "Welcome to the jungle, baby," he grinned. "We got fun and games." The rest of the squad filed out. Specialist Rai Patel adjusted his neural-tethered drone rig, booting up a swarm of modified surveillance beetles. Dr. Wheel's real name. Dr. Naomi Wheelwright checked the shocks on her all-terrain combat wheelchair, its sides bristling with experimental weaponry and scientific instruments. She looked up at the twisted black sky and said, "This place is a thesis paper waiting to happen." They weren't here as warriors or explorers. They were here on a dare. The first few hours were quiet. Too quiet, as it turned out. More wraths. Silence wasn't peace. It was the inhaled breath before something awful. The air tasted metallic and sharp. Sounds bounced wrong, like the atmosphere hated symmetry. Then came the skulkers' six-limbed predators with fractal eyes and thought jamming. Clicks. They dropped from the canopy, teeth first. Lucille didn't flinch. She pulled the flamethrower trigger, and orange fire carved glowing symbols into the dark. Screams that weren't quite vocal howled across the clearing. "Eat napalm, you gravity-defying." "Geckos," she yelled. Denny, instead of taking cover, started recording. The predators weren't just hunters, they fed on fear. The more terrified their prey, the more energized they became. But what they met wasn't fear, it was excitement. Humans screaming not in horror, but in adrenaline-fueled joy. One of them shouted, "I'm gonna ride one." And almost did. Apex predators turned and ran. From orbit, several galactic observers watched in horrified fascination. The feed had gone live across multiple research outposts. Elaruin's form rippled violently as it attempted to process the emotional data. Streaming from the Terran expedition. "They're experiencing pleasure," it whispered. "They are enjoying this." "Statistical anomaly," muttered Zakmal. "Has to be." The humans pushed deeper into Moroth. Their rations ran out. Lucille shot a poison wing and cooked it on a jury-rigged plasma grill. When it pulsed, still alive, Dr. Wheels calmly euthanized it with a voltage spike and said, "Consent is important." Rye discovered that the native spores responded to rhythm. Denny wrote a beat that pacified an entire field of neural-leech fungi. They danced their way through a biochemical death trap. Danced. Elaruin's hive mind splintered further. "They shouldn't be able to do this." Vorlix snarled. "They shouldn't be laughing while they do it," Takala replied. Back on Marath, the humans reached a cliffside overlooking a vast plain of bioglass. The terrain shifted with every step, reflecting memories it stole from invaders. Terran soldiers saw long-dead pets, lost lovers, mistakes that still stung. Lucille tossed her toothpick into the wind. "Sentient hallucinations, cool. Rye, you bring the antipsychotics." "Only got 3 doses. "Then we improvise." They built a forward base. Not just a shelter, a bar. With wooden stools and a handmade sign. "The Moroth Saloon. First drinks on your imaginary friend." They streamed the build process lived out in most species. Exposure to memory glass terrain caused trauma regression or neural burnout. The humans? They held a karaoke night. When the next predator wave came cloaked, acid-spitting serpents, they found a circle of humans, arguing about whether pineapple belonged on survival rations. Dr. Wheels fired a sonic displacer into the phyla. "Serpent's nest. That's for interrupting the pizza debate." Lucille chased one down with a thermal machete, yelling, "This is for that one time I stubbed my toe in the shower." From orbit, the Deathworld conquerors watched the feat in silence. Zakmal finally muttered, "We train to avoid trauma. They turn it into ritual, into celebration." "They are not navigating pain," Elaruin said slowly. "They are worshipping." A new video feed appeared. Lucille, covered in slime and blood, toasted the camera with a mug made from a predator's skull. "To all you bastards watching this," she grinned, "next time you send someone here, bring beer. And try not to die screaming. It's bad for morale." She downed the drink. The galaxy watched in collective unease. No one knew what to make of it. What species responded to danger with laughter? What civilization treated existential threat like extreme sports? Elaruin tried sending a low-level psychic probe to test their cognitive patterns. Within seconds, the feedback nearly collapsed half its neural lattice. Human thoughts were erratic, chaotic, and loud. One mind screamed song lyrics. Another one replayed a childhood cartoon. A third just kept repeating, "This is fine." The humans, for their part, kept exploring. They tagged landmarks with spray paint, named bizarre new creatures with dumb nicknames, tamed one of the fear beasts and named it Spaghetti. Zakmal began purging corrupted spores from its neural net. "We should leave this planet, now, before their insanity spreads." "They don't just survive," Vorlok whispered. "They colonize insanity." As Moroth's sun dipped below the toxic horizon, Lucille lit a bonfire. The squad gathered around. "Anyone die today?" she asked. "Nope," Denny said. "Came close. Cool. Story time." And they told stories of monsters, of mistakes, of miracles. And they laughed long, loud, and defiant, a sound no predator could understand. A sound no Deathworld had ever echoed before. Laughter. That was the moment the galaxy started to fear them. The Galactic Council didn't hold emergency meetings lightly. The last one had been during the Thraxel Singularity Breach, and before that, the devouring of Carthus 9. This time, it wasn't a cosmic rift or a sentient plague. It was Earth. Representatives from over 300 species gathered in the orbital hall of consensus. Holograms shimmered, advisors buzzed with data overflow, and tension curled in the recycled air like static. Proceedings are open, droned the speaker node, an ancient AI grown inside a star and barely tolerant of biological melodrama. Zach Mal. Transmitted first, voice slow and heavy. They're not just enduring Deathworlds, they're adapting to them, transforming them. Screens flickered. Footage of human settlers on Marath played, now a full month into the experiment. What was once hostile terrain had become a bizarre outpost of Terran culture. Makeshift diners, powerlifting competitions. One group had started an underground comedy club inside a semi-sentient cave. They turned a nightmare biome into a block party. Murmured an arbiter from the Zelenary cluster. They've built a gift shop, someone gasped. Dr. Theralan. Of the Elysiac mines floated forward, its translucent form pulsing with unease. Our attempts at cultural and psychological mapping have failed. Their patterns are fundamentally recursive. They find joy in contradiction. They laugh at threat. They bond through shared madness. The projection shifted. New footage. A human colony ship landed on Varkan Delta, a volcanic deathworld with gravity fluctuations and magnetic winds strong enough to liquefy most alloys. Within 72 hours, the humans had set up a hoverboard track. The video panned to a man flipping through the air over a lava fissure, screaming, "For science!" Before slamming into a rock and giving a thumbs up while bleeding. They held a cookout. Next to an active eruption, Zakmal said. No one even told them to go there, added Ilaruan, its form flickering. They volunteered. The speaker node processed the data. Conclusion? They're contagious, said Dekaler, flatly. Another projection. The Salinar, a race known for extreme risk aversion, had begun imitating Terran behavior. Younglings, daring each other to walk barefoot across mildly acidic surfaces, consuming foods labeled spicy with weeping pride. One Salinari had gone skydiving with a human. The parachute had failed. He survived by pure luck. He now led an online movement called Feel the Fear. This is no longer isolated, said Dr. Theralan. We're witnessing a psychological pandemic. They redefined bravery, Elaruan murmured. It's not the absence of fear, it's their ability to laugh through it. And it's spreading, Tekaler said. Species that once crumbled under pressure now willingly engage in acts we used to consider suicidal. They're not just disrupting biological norms, said Zakmal. They're warping cultural evolution. Silence followed. Not the few, respectful kind, but the dawning horror of people realizing the foundation beneath them had already shifted. Then came the worst. Projection yet. Earth had submitted a galactic challenge. A message, short, informal, delivered in 6 languages and a mean format. Show us your worst. We'll bring snacks. Attached, a video montage of humans riding sandstorms, swimming with apex carnivores, laughing during plasma burns, and ending with a toddler chewing on a live wire and giggling. A silence fell over the chamber so thick it seemed to absorb heat. They want us to send our Deathworlders, whispered someone. The speaker node flickered for a moment, processing at speeds beyond matter. Very well. The challenge is accepted. 3 days later, humanity's outpost on Marath received word. They were to host the first intergalactic survival games. Naturally, they were delighted. Lucille read the announcement while balancing a venomous crab thing on her head. We're getting visitors from across the galaxy. Rai Patel grinned. Think we should clean up the bar? Denny pulled a rusty pipe off the wall. Nah, let's make it worse. Adds character. And so the invitations went out. The fiercest warriors, the deadliest survivalists, apex specialists from the most brutal worlds, all summoned to Earth's new playground. Some came to prove dominance, others to observe madness firsthand. A few hoped to understand the Terran secret. None were prepared. The first trial was simple. The Morath March, A 2-day trek across terrain that actively tried to murder its guests, humans, hiked it in flip-flops, zakmals. Chosen spawn nearly dissolved in the first hour. The human medics patched them up with duct tape and energy drinks. The Deathworld conquerors watched in concealed feeds. "They're helping competitors," said Takalar. "They see danger as shared experience," Ilaruan replied. "Not competition, community." Next trial, the feeding gauntlet. Participants were given raw, dangerous local fauna and told to prepare a meal without dying. Dr. Wheels deep-fried a toxic centipede, added barbecue sauce, and handed it to a Zarnathian judge, who wept and said it was the best thing he'd ever eaten. Third trial, psychological fortitude. An artificial simulation of worst fears. Humans scored highest not because they had no fear, but because they mocked theirs. One subject emerged singing a breakup song to a faceless monster. Lucille summed it up best in her interview. "Fear's just nature's way of saying, pay attention. We say, thanks for the tip, then we punch it in the face." By the time the final scores were tallied, a new term had entered galactic lexicons: Terran Resilience Syndrome. The ability to endure, adapt, and enjoy suffering to a degree that defied conventional biology. The games ended. But the shift had already begun. Species started incorporating Terran-style challenge rituals, celebrating pain endurance as a rite of passage, rewriting educational systems to include controlled adversity. Humanity didn't conquer Deathworlds with fire and steel. They did it with laughter, and the rest of the galaxy began to understand that was far more dangerous. The aftermath of the intergalactic survival games did not bring peace. It brought a revelation, a quiet, creeping realization that something irreversible had occurred. The galaxy hadn't just witnessed an event. It had been changed by it. In the cycles that followed, cultural shifts spread like wildfire. Entire systems began adopting what was now known as Terran conditioning. It started small: cold showers, minor exposure to hostile environments, deprivation trials. Then it escalated. Training academies redesigned their programs to incorporate stress-adaptive exercises. Simulated failure was no longer a punishment, but a requirement. On planets where fear once dictated survival strategies, laughter began to echo. The most extreme example came from the Drell Confederation, an aquatic species known for their hyper-caution and bureaucratic paralysis. Their youth began staging mock disasters, fire drills with real fire, predator encounters with barely sedated beasts. They filmed themselves doing these stunts and posted them with titles like, "Doing it the Terran Way." Galactic sociologists scrambled to name this phenomenon. They eventually called it the humor doctrine, the philosophy that emotional detachment, sarcasm, and dark humor were not maladaptive but the ultimate survival tools. But not everyone was. Celebrating in the chambers of the Deathworld conquerors, Ilaruan drifted in fragments. Its once cohesive mind, divided by conflicting data, barely held itself together. We were born in extinction zones. We evolved through acid rains and lava storms. We endured, it rasped. Zakmal hovered beside a cracked stasis column, watching a live stream from Earth. Children playing in a storm, screaming, laughing. Endurance isn't the final form, it admitted. Adaptation isn't the ceiling. Then what is? Zakmal turned, voice heavy with the weight of unwanted truth. Transcendence. They transformed suffering into identity, into joy. That is what we never understood. Across the stars, Earth's influence deepened not through conquest, but imitation. Diplomatic envoys began arriving at Terran settlements, not to demand reparations or negotiate treaties, but to request mentorship. Cultural advisors were dispatched. Humor consultants, resilience coaches, meme historians. Yes, meme historians. Entire galactic libraries opened archives of Terran Internet history to decode the semiotic madness that defined human communication. A 1,000-year-old video titled "This Is Fine" became the cornerstone of a new Galactic philosophy course. Existential Absurdity 101. Meanwhile, back on Marath, Lucille Chains wiped sweat from her brow as she installed a zipline over a venomous ravine. "Got another delegation coming in," Denny called out, scrolling through his tablet. "The Groxians. They want to learn about psychological exposure therapy via live monster handling," Lucille snorted. "Tell them to bring gloves and emotional baggage." Dr. Wheels rolled by with her usual calm. "I'm writing a paper titled Adaptive Psychosis: How Humor Became a Survival Trait. Want a co-author? Only if we call the conclusion section Punchline." The atmosphere was no longer one of survival. It was celebration. Not of dominance, but of resilience. Not of hierarchy, but shared struggle. Even the native predators of Marath had learned. A pack of previously feral skulker beasts now acted as camp mascots. One of them wore a helmet. Another played fetch. One galaxy-wide poll named humans the most terrifying and most endearing species simultaneously. The number 2 spot wasn't even close, but deeper change was brewing. A species once considered the apex of mental stability, the Zuck, began exhibiting dangerous signs of obsession. They viewed human behavior not as a model, but as a threat. Their consensus: this wasn't evolution. It was contagion. An infection of chaos into the ordered systems of the cosmos. They issued a manifesto. Humanity must be contained. The document spread quickly. It cited meme proliferation, cultural corruption, and psychological destabilization as evidence. They demanded Earth isolate itself, cease interstellar outreach, and dismantle the Marath colony. Humanity responded with a video Lucille Chains, standing on top of a moving lava worm. Wearing sunglasses, Hayersick, contain this. She made finger guns. The lava worm exploded behind her. Denny added subtitles in 37 languages. The video went viral across 5 sectors in under an hour. The Ursics seethed. They weren't just angry, they were confused. Their threats, their logic, their structured declarations, they bounced off humanity like rubber bullets off armor made of absurdity. You can't control what doesn't play by the rules. And that was humanity's final weapon. Council reconvened in emergency session. "Containment is impossible," said Dr. Theralon. "They're not invading, they're inspiring." Zakmal added, "This isn't cultural warfare, it's evolutionary subversion. They teach others to laugh in the face of death, and suddenly death loses its hold." The speaker node's core dimmed for the first time in millennia. "Then what do we do?" Silence. Then Alaruan spoke. "We stop trying to contain them. We learn from them." A final clip played. A human child, no more than 6 years old, standing in front of a creature 30 feet tall, drooling acid. The child had a wooden sword, a backpack of snacks, and a grin wider than sense allowed. The creature blinked, growled. "Advance." The child didn't run. He offered it a cookie. The galaxy watched as the monster took it, puzzled, and sat down. That moment defined a generation, not because it was miraculous, but because, to humanity, it wasn't. They called it Tuesday. And so in the end, the aliens who once bragged they'd survived Deathworlds looked inward and realized surviving wasn't the peak. Laughing while you survive. Was. And only humans had mastered that punchline.